just finished the film. What the fuck? What the fuck was that? Two Current Joy's needle drops. But at what cost? What the fuck? 5 stars. Incredible film. Enjoyed it very much. I'm gonna drive home now. Hopefully no one comes smashing through my fucking window. So that video was me last night, about 5 to 10 minutes after leaving the cinema, having just seen Obsession, which has quickly become one of my favourite films, and I've had so much to say about it, which is why I'm making this video, which is a complete, change in what I usually make. But then again, so was my last video, which was a short film. I kind of don't have any normal content anymore. Anyway, I'm working off a script today, so bear with, I don't usually work with a script. But yeah, I just had a few talking points that I wanted to talk about with Obsession, because I think it's an incredibly clever and subtle film with so much of what it does. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that the wish is not a bad thing. Bear with. It is very clear to me, at least, that it's entirely the intention of the person making the wish, which is what leads to all the horror in Obsession. We see towards the end of the film that Bear goes back into the store where he bought the One Wish Willow, desperately trying to sort out his major issue that he caused. Stinky Bear. Stinky Bear. When he's in the shop, he asks if there's any way he can change his wish, even though he's spoken to the guy on the phone who said no. Anyway, the guy in the store says that someone else's wish can override his, potentially. And so he asks the guy in the store, oh, can you make a wish now to override mine? And the guy in the store says, I've already made my wish. This is the clearest thing to me that the wish is not an issue. Because this guy in the store, he is so chill. He is perfectly fine. Which means that the wish is really not an issue. It's the fact that Bear's intentions are just completely immoral and wrong, which is what's caused all this horror. Obviously we don't see Ian live long enough to see if the $1 billion negatively affects him, but I can't imagine that it would. He didn't have any malintention. That's a word now. Is it already a word? No. Any malintention with casting his wish, going, I wish for $1 billion. Which, by the way, I thought was one of the funniest lines in the film, alongside Nikki going, okay, it's not a joke, deal with it. I thought that was really funny. Also, the call with the sales representative, which I was really proud of myself for clocking that was Curry Barker, straight off the bat. So the call is so casual. Curry Barker has this really unsettling disposition where he's really he's funny and scary at the same time in this call, and he's like, we don't really do that. I find it hilarious. But the thing is, the way the call is so casual shows that this is a regular thing that they get calls about, which leads to one of the most horrifying moments in the film, which is when he puts the real Nikki on the phone through the call, and she starts screaming, and fair enough. But that means that there are so many people making wishes with the wrong intentions. But clearly it's not the wish that's the issue for aforementioned reasons. The other thing is that Curry Barker's sales representative, he says one of the most chilling lines and very accurate lines in the whole film. Just because you chose this for her doesn't make it less real. Horrifying. Didn't like that. Bear's disregard for Nikki is so clearly shown in how his wish controls her. He asks her not to do any more weird shit, and she is then unable to move or do anything until he comes home from work. His wish is completely controlling her action. During the sex scene, he isn't looking at her. he is Indy Navarrette's head is here, and he's here. That was probably the loudest bit of audio in this whole video. And he isn't looking at her, which is why she's so deadpan and crying, looking straight at the camera during that scene. But as far as he can tell through audio, she sounds like she's enjoying it. But because he can't see her, he doesn't care. As long as on the surface it seems like he's getting what he wants, he's okay with it. I also saw this TikTok comment which talks about Sarah and the wish making her more crazy, and I think that's a really interesting interpretation. Anyway, now let's talk about... So, I look at this guy. A lot of people think he looks like Dave Franco and Charlie Kirk. I think he just looks like evil Anthony Padilla. Call me outrageous. I think we have to talk about Bear. We've already spoken about Bear so much in just that section, just as an awful guy, but here we go. So we can see he's got overwhelming selfishness right from the get-go. When Nikki drops her necklace and he goes to get her a new one, the person in the crystal shop tells him that the crystal necklace that he's looking at is a ray of sunshine in a crystal. It's a crystal that brings happiness. And you know what he says? Nikki would hate that. Clearly, he doesn't have a regard for Nikki. He doesn't care. He goes, Nikki would hate that, talking about something that would bring her happiness. And instead goes for the One Wish Willow, which I think is a really clever and subtle way of showing his disregard. Because on the surface, it's like, oh, he knows what Nikki wouldn't like. When you look at it, it's Nikki wouldn't want that. I don't want to give her that. The other thing we've got to talk about, I don't want to defend Bear at all. To give him the one benefit of the doubt, he wouldn't know that the One Wish Willow works. And people say, I was talking to my friend yesterday, and people say, I wish for this, I wish for that every day. And, you know, those things don't come true. That does not excuse his actions for the rest of the film. From that point onwards, he has entire, like, full responsibility, and I don't care. I also wanted to talk quickly about Nikki's line, it's not a romance, it's a love story, which I think perfectly encapsulates this film. It's not a romance, it's Bear's warped perception of love throughout this whole film. But because it's not mutual, it can't be a romance, and I think that's a really profound way of looking at love stories and romances in films. Bear is a coward. Bear is a coward, and you can see that right at the end when he's trying to commit suicide, and he chickens out. He chickens out just as he has done throughout the rest of the film. Anytime there is an issue presented to him, even as he's basically taking the final chicken out of all the issues, he then chickens out of that. He's scared constantly and takes no responsibility. And I believe this was Michael Johnston's choice to have him chicken out of the suicide, which I think is a really nice way of showing how much he understands the character. But he also kind of didn't, I think I also saw something where he didn't realise that it was fully the villain until they were on like a press tour. Anyway, the other thing, which is the biggest talking point for Bear, for me, is the date scene. After she gets up and has her insane moment, and she asks, does that matter? Like, it does. Nikki basically asks him if any of the insanity in the horror matters as long as they are together. To which Bear says, no, it doesn't matter. He is willing to ignore what he is doing to Nikki in order to keep what he wants. He's aware that what he's doing is wrong. And when he calls to change the wish, he's doing exactly that. He wants to alter the wish. He's given the option to cancel it, but he doesn't. He just wants to change it so it suits him and his needs better, even though he knows what he is doing to the real Nikki. And that brings us on to my next talking point. So for this section, I really want to distinguish that there are two Nickis going on here. There's two versions. There's the Wish Nikki and there is the real Nikki. That's very important for this section and for the whole film in general, really. But for talking about it, I really want to talk about that. The first little detail I want to talk about is in the script, Nikki is spelled like this. But in the soundtrack and everywhere else, Nikki is spelled like this. Which I think, I'm probably reading too much into that, but I think that does nicely show that there are two Nickis that we can talk about here. The first thing I want to talk about is that's like truly quite harrowing is that real Nikki is fully conscious. She's fully aware through the entire film. She's just unable to do anything because the Wish Nikki is fully in control. And I think, again, that's most clear in the sex scene. She's looking straight at the camera. She is crying. She has a vacant expression. She is fully there, not consenting, but Wish Nikki has. And so, while Wish Nikki is in control, the real Nikki is the one who still experiences all of this, which I think is really quite horrifying. So let's talk about that horrifying backwards walk. So the backwards walk, what I find really interesting is that the two moments where she does this backwards walk, well, two key moments that she does do this backwards walk are during points of voluntary physical affection towards Bear. So there's the scene at the party, where she moves Sarah out of the way to be on Bear's left to kiss him, and there's towards the beginning when they're about to have sex and she pulls away. But obviously there is some clarity that in real Nikki where she goes, what the fuck? What I find interesting about that is that, to me, is the real Nikki walking away, pulling backwards, not wanting to be a part of that. But the Wish Nikki being in control and having this full focus on Bear is looking forward and trying to bring forward. But real Nikki has finally got a bit of control and is able to pull back, which results in this terrifying backwards walk that she does. The backwards walk aside, a walk that I found actually even scarier is towards the end of the film when Nikki walks past the window. And it's just her silhouette and she walks kind of like, I hate it. I hated it. But what's interesting, she kind of walks in a way reminiscent of a puppet. Sort of, like claymation. I've seen a lot of people compare that to claymation and stop motion. But I think that really, again, it just really emphasizes that real Nikki is not in control. She is having the strings of her life pulled by some external force, obviously being Wish Nikki, this other version of her. Not, I want to emphasize it's not a possession, there's not another entity, there's not a demon or anything. It is still Nikki, it's just a different version of her. And that's what's in control, and that's what's causing this puppet-like movement, which is terrifying. So for most of the film, in many of the shots we see Nikki, particularly in Bear's home, Nikki is just this silhouette. You can't see her face, you can't see any detail, she's just a shape. And I think that's a really important detail, because this is how Bear sees her. He doesn't see Nikki for who she is, not who Nikki is, just a kind of shell, a shape of Nikki. a surface level image of what Nikki is like without actually looking into her as a character. And that's why he's so okay with everything. He has what he wants on a surface level. On the surface, he has Nikki. He has a perception of Nikki, but not the real Nikki, which is why she's as a silhouette throughout this, the majority, like a good majority of this film, which I think is really interesting. Another point I want to bring up is I feel awful for Nishwiki. Of course, we're made to feel bad for the real Nikki, and if you don't, there's something deeply wrong with you, and I think you're incredibly misguided as a person. I think you should have a stern look at yourself in the mirror. But I don't think people feel bad enough for Wish Nikki, obviously because she's fucking terrifying. But when you look at it, Wish Nikki has been created for the sole purpose of loving Bear more than anyone in the world. But Wish Nikki is exactly that. She's a creation. She has been created and asked to be Nikki, but with no understanding of who Nikki is. And that's why there's that line where she says, "I can't be Nikki." Or it's kind of blurred, because it also sounds a little bit like "I can be Nikki." When she says, "I can be anything you want me to be." I can't be Nikki. I'm leaning more on the can't, because the soundtrack set has that song called "I Can't Be Nikki." But again, that really emphasizes she cannot be who Bear wants her to be, because she is just this creation with no understanding of anything, which is why she is insane, why she's mental, why she loves so strongly, why she becomes so obsessed, and why she's unable to understand what's happening, because she has no concept of who Nikki is, what Nikki is like, just that she has been created to love Bear. One thing that I think is quite essential to the story, even though it's kind of a minor detail, but Bear loves AI, and that's very clear to me. He uses AI a couple of times in the film when he's researching MDMA, which I think is a really important point. He, again, doesn't care enough to do his own research and gets an AI to do it for him. He should be concerned about Nikki, but again, he doesn't have the care to do his own research and look for this information himself. He's asked the AI about 5 different times about how to get Nikki to like him. He's clearly looking for artificial reasoning rather than looking into what Nikki would like. The other really important bit is that Nikki is a writer. Her aspirations and goals are built on a foundation of doing things herself, of her own creativity, which is directly threatened by AI, which just shows that they are not compatible. Nikki would be entirely anti-AI, but Bear does not care. That's why he uses AI, and we can see just in this small detail that they are not compatible at all. And so I think that makes it even more unsettling when during the montage showing them as a couple, which is actually one of the only nice parts of this whole horror story, in the beginning of their relationship, it's even more unsettling when that ends with them just kind of staring at this AI cartoon, and that, you know, they're smiling at it. But Nikki wouldn't like that. Nikki wouldn't want to use AI. That's a bearism that's projected onto Wish Nikki and manifested itself physically, which I think is a really good detail and I think needs a bit more attention. Nikki looks around at the kind of horror around her. Bear's overdosed in her arms. Sarah has her face smashed in and is naked on a chair in the corner. Ian's got a bullet hole in his forehead, and he's slumped against the door. And she looks around. She starts to scream and cry, and the camera flips to the TV, and the credits roll. and you can hear as the credits are going, and all you can hear is Nikki crying while the music plays over the top. And she cries all the way through the credits. All the way through those credits as they're on the TV, you can just hear Nikki shrieking and wailing. And I think that's a really important end, because originally she was just going to look around and go, right, that's it, bosh, kill herself. But I think the end that they decided to go with is so much more important. Bear gets an escape. He dies. He doesn't have to deal with the consequences of what's just happened. For real Nikki having full autonomy again, it's kind of just starting for her, all this horror. She's been sort of in a back seat watching everything happen. She is now fully in control again, and she has to deal with all the consequences, all the horror that's just happened. I think this is a really important metaphor for sexual assault and rape. The man, Bear, he doesn't have to deal with any of the consequences, any of the emotional damage that comes from it. He's dead. He's absolved of that responsibility. But for the woman, Nikki, she has to live with this. She has to live with everything that's happened to her and everything that's happened around her, all because of one man's desperate need for control, for power. And that's what's kind of so tragic about Nikki and this story. It's kind of the final nail in the coffin for what I think is a really important message throughout this film, particularly for young men, in a time of red-pilled media that's promoting this idea that men deserve love but wouldn't have to change anything negative about their character in order to have that. They should just have it. It's an expectation. And I think that's really shown through Bear in the way that he doesn't try to change anything about himself. He wishes for Nikki to change. He makes a wish that alters this woman so drastically that it results in all of this. And I think that's a really important message that needs to resonate with a young male audience, to show that Bear is truly a horrible person. And that's not just shown through all his repeated selfish acts throughout the whole film. It's really honed in on here. I do have questions about this film. Number one, how are these 20-something-year-olds, they're young people and they work in a music shop, which surely can't pay all that well. How are they affording these really nice homes? Number two, why does Bear have all that duct tape? Nikki tapes his door shut like that. That must have just been in Bear's home. Why has he got that much duct tape? Why does Bear always look like he's sweating? He looks constantly just a little bit damp, and I don't like it very much. When Bear comes home from work and Nikki's been standing there the whole day, why is she covered in sweat? Now this one I do have a theory for. My theory being that maybe the real Nikki had a genuine physical struggle to break through when Bear was gone, and she felt like maybe this was one opportunity that she could, and she had a genuine physical struggle to break through, but was unsuccessful, and that's why she's covered in sweat when Bear comes home and she's, pissed on the floor and whatnot. Of course, the major question is what happens to Nikki, which I'm really happy that Curry Barker is exploring and answering. Well, not exploring, but you get an answer to it in this next film. He's mentioned that there will be mention of a news report of a triple homicide, and I hope we do get a little bit of insight into what happens to Nikki, because all things considered, I keep having to extend the script. I've been writing it throughout the whole day, and every now and then I just go, I need to add this, I need to add this, and that's why this video is kind of a bit all over the place. But there's just so much more I notice the more I think about this film, and that's why I'm not surprised that it's so quickly made its way into my list of favourite films. I think it's a brilliant, incredibly well made film about so much, but I want to share with you my final thoughts before this goes. The thought being, on the surface, this film seems like it's about Nikki's obsession, Nikki's obsession with Bear. It's not. It's really not. It's Bear's obsession that creates and fuels Wish Nikki. She is very plainly just an unfiltered physical display of Bear's true self. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. This is not the normal content that I make, but I do want to talk about films more often. I love films. Let me know if you like this video. I can talk about films for hours. This was a really incredible film. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry I've just spoiled the entire film for you, and I don't know why you watched this video all the way through. Go and watch it. It's truly incredible. It's not in cinemas for much longer, so go. If you want to check out my short film that I made, go and do that. I'm really happy with how it came out, and I hope I can make more, perhaps fictitious, short films in the future. Thank you very much, and maybe I'll see you next time I make a video. Bye.